It certainly is.
Okay.
How do you have my social security number?
Well, so I have your social security number. I have your full name. Obviously, I don't think that's a secret. I see all your fishing licenses and hunting licenses from Alaska, Oregon, Virginia. I mean, I found all the places that you do your thing.
Alaska, Oregon, Virginia, huh?
Yep. I even have your driver's license number in Florida.
Oh, that's so funny.
Looks like you haven't changed your phone number.
What begins as a data privacy demonstration quickly turns into something much larger, a map of how modern systems expose ordinary people, how institutions fail to respond, and how technological vulnerability bleeds into moral disorder. This conversation moves from public records and breached databases to organized exploitation, overwhelmed investigators, and a culture that has made intrusion cheap. The point is not just that information can be found. It is that exposure has become structural, and the consequences are no longer theoretical. This is Synthesize, where we turn long podcast conversations into their most important ideas. The opening shock matters because it collapses a comfortable illusion. Privacy is often discussed as a policy issue, something distant, legal, and abstract. But here it arrives as a personal reveal. Names, IDs, locations, licenses, history. The important point is not that one skilled researcher can find stray details. It is that the modern data environment has made intimate facts searchable, linkable, and usable. The guest isn't claiming a magical power. He's showing how ordinary the underlying exposure has become.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Okay.
How do you have my social security number?
Well, so I have your social security number. I have your full name. Obviously, I don't think that's a secret. I see all your fishing licenses and hunting licenses from Alaska, Oregon, Virginia. I mean, I found all the places that you do your thing.
Alaska, Oregon, Virginia, huh?
Yep. I even have your driver's license number in Florida.
Oh, that's so funny.
Looks like you haven't changed your phone number.
This chapter preserves the interview's core first act function: shock as proof. The reveal forces the audience to stop thinking in terms of isolated hacks and start thinking in terms of systemic availability. It converts privacy loss from theory into lived vulnerability. After the personal shock, the conversation widens. The danger isn't just that one person was targeted. It's that the same logic can be applied to millions. Large databases, poor security practices, and the reuse of old credentials turn an already invasive information market into a mass vulnerability. Repetition in a database doesn't make the data less real. It makes the profile richer. Addresses, identifiers, and fragments from different moments in a life can be stitched into something operational. That is the shift from embarrassing exposure to scalable infrastructure.
Data and was using it to, I'm assuming sell data, make money on it. Well, he decided to reuse credentials for a demo project or old project on his main production system, which allowed 2.8 billion records to be exposed with, we know there's about 300 million Americans. So if there's 2.8 billion records in this database, there's a good chance that you're in it with your social security number. And you're in there about, I think, 15 times if you look at that document, with everywhere you've ever lived, including anyone associated.
The number matters because it changes the scale of the viewer's understanding. This is no longer about whether a public figure can be profiled. It is about how a breach economy turns entire populations into searchable inventories. By this point, the conversation lands on a harsher conclusion. If enough information can be bought, scraped, leaked, and correlated, then privacy in the old sense no longer exists as a stable condition. What remains is not secrecy, but temporary obscurity. And obscurity is fragile. It lasts only until someone has a reason to look. This chapter matters because it gives the documentary its thesis line. The system is not occasionally failing to protect people. It is built in a way that assumes exposure.
It doesn't seem like there's any privacy possible in the United States.
Absolutely not. No. And when it comes to technology, you are fully exposed. It's like you're naked, you know? I mean, I came in here, you know, we met one time before in person and,
Yeah.
you know, it's not like I snuck your social out of your wallet that day. Like I came in here saying, hey, Tucker, I have your social security number, your warranty deed, and your signature. Yeah, maybe you don't have credit, but most people in the United States do. And it's a big deal to them, you know? So
Of course.
This is the cleanest articulation of the film's first major claim. Technological life has rendered the individual transparent. It translates technical detail into a human feeling the audience can immediately understand. Nakedness, not privacy. The documentary then takes a more disturbing turn. Once the guest begins describing the people he has encountered, technical language no longer seems sufficient. Databases and breaches explain access, but not motive. Here, the conversation argues that some of what he has seen is hard to describe in ordinary criminal terms, because the aim is not just profit, concealment, or impulse. It is degradation itself. Whether viewers accept the exact language or not, this is the point where the film shifts from cyber vulnerability to moral confrontation.
No motive.
they don't
No,
have a motive.
right.
They're a nihilist, extremist group.
So that, I mean, I think is the definition of evil. The whole point of it is the suffering. There's no, it's not like you robbed a liquor store and shot the clerk in order to get his money, which is obviously evil, but at least it's explicable in human terms. This is just spiritual evil.
It's spiritually evil, and their logo is a pentagram. They identify as a satanic cult, the original group was called 764 Group. It was the original, the first one that ever came out that had this ideology or methodology that they use, and they have like.
This chapter preserves the interview's philosophical escalation. The guest is trying to explain why ordinary motives fail to account for what he has encountered, and why the emotional tenor of the conversation changes so sharply here. Once the scale of the threat comes into view, another question follows. Why doesn't the state simply shut it down? The answer offered here is not that nothing is being done, but that the response is mismatched to the volume and speed of the problem. Investigations exist, cases exist, but the number of targets can exceed the number of active inquiries in a single community. This is a structural problem. Enforcement is still operating case by case, while the underlying ecosystem is multiplying faster than any single agency can absorb.
Has there been any effort to arrest these groups?
Yeah, so this is what makes it a little bit difficult. So there's 450 active investigations right now with the FBI. Not nearly enough. I could show you one group that Sentinel Foundation and I, which I'll explain how I even got involved in Sentinel Foundation in a minute. I can go in one of those groups, and there's more than 450 targets in that group alone. I mean, and more needs to be done from law enforcement, but I understand that there's difficulty because
the force of this chapter is the mismatch. It preserves the argument that the issue cannot be understood as a handful of criminals being hunted down one by one. The scale itself becomes part of the story. Midway through the conversation, one memory sharpens the argument against institutional complacency. The guest had tried to get attention earlier. The story wasn't taken seriously enough, or wasn't considered viable enough to run. Then came a later arrest tied to the same figure. This chapter is not just about media failure. It is about the cost of delayed belief. When warning signs are dismissed because a story seems too strange, too dark, or too hard to verify, the burden does not disappear. It simply moves forward in time, onto victims.
At this point that nobody wants to run anything. 6 months goes by. Nathan Larson's in my Google alerts. I get a notification. Nathan Larson's arrested with a 13-year-old girl in Denver, Colorado that he kidnapped and raped. And I was so aggravated because every one of those articles, I know that could have been prevented if they listened to me in the first place. There's 7,000 other people in this.
This is the documentary's clearest indictment of gatekeeping failure. It preserves the emotional logic behind the guest's later willingness to use alternative platforms. Waiting for formal recognition had already proved costly. After enough exposure to this material, the host reaches for a different vocabulary. This is an important tonal shift. The conversation is no longer asking only what tools, agencies, or prosecutions might help. It is asking whether the problem reveals a deeper cultural emptiness that technical fixes cannot answer. Viewers may disagree with the religious frame, but the underlying point is broader. Some forms of social breakdown feel too large to be solved by procedure alone. Law can punish acts. It struggles to restore a moral center.
I can see why. I just feel like the only way that that's ever going to get fixed is not through law enforcement, federal law enforcement, but through like Christian religious revival. I mean, only an atheist country could have stuff like that.
It's unbelievable. It's sad, and I agree with you. And I believe in God. I think that that these people are the definition of evil. I can't find any other.
This chapter preserves the conversation's moral exhaustion. The host's reaction captures the sense that purely institutional remedies may be inadequate to a problem rooted in appetite, nihilism, and cultural collapse. Dark investigations often remain invisible until a platform with enough reach decides to absorb the risk. That is the role this chapter plays in the larger arc. The guest's evidence and warnings had existed before mass recognition arrived. What changed was not simply the truth of the story, but its distribution. Someone with reach decided that uncertainty was worth bearing in order to force public attention. In documentary terms, this is a release of pressure, the point where a private alarm becomes a public witness.
And everybody wants to hear the story. Nobody wanted to listen to me the day before, but now they want to hear it because it went viral on social media. And one of those people was Sean Ryan. Sean Ryan, and I didn't know Sean at this time. We never even spoke to each other, but he saw my clip and he was like, I want to get your message out there. And he took a huge chance on me because I could have been lying. I could have been a nut job, a schizophrenic. I might have been making this whole story up. But Sean took the chance on me of not only.
This chapter preserves the late act reversal. After disbelief and failed gatekeeping, the story gains force because someone chose to publish first and validate through exposure rather than silence. The final act returns to technology, but now the audience hears it differently. Earlier, exposure meant data. Here it means physical vulnerability. A connected home feels secure because it is instrumented. Phones, alarms, cameras, Wi-Fi devices. But that connectivity can also create a shared point of failure. If communication itself is flooded or disrupted, the smart home becomes blind, mute, and dependent all at once. The significance of this chapter is visual and practical. It translates abstract cyber insecurity into an immediate domestic scenario.
A way to put this into an analogy would be, okay, we're in a small room, right? If I screamed at the top of my lungs and then I told you to tell me a story, when I'm screaming, if somebody was sitting over there, they may not be able to hear your story because I'm screaming. That's what this is doing. It's screaming at the top of its lungs, 70 meters, and signals they're just so garbled by the time they make it out of that range the 70-meter range, they don't work. So it's just immediately the second I press on that button, everything goes off.
What's the cancer risk from being near something like that?
This chapter preserves a crucial late insight. Digital dependence creates real-world fragility. Security devices are only as useful as the signals they rely on, and those signals can be drowned out. The closing idea is almost banal, which is why it lands. The object is a light bulb. The implication is network intrusion. Modern life keeps absorbing convenience as if each device were isolated and harmless. But every connected object is also a potential foothold. The details here are technical, yet the underlying lesson is simple. Our environments are increasingly programmable by people we never invited. The documentary ends not with a grand conspiracy, but with a quiet redefinition of ordinary life. The home is no longer just a shelter.
I leave that in your house, and then I get to do what?
So leave this in a house, for example. The goal would be to access your network. So I would knock your devices offline with it. It has the ability to do that, which, it's called a de-authentication attack. And then from there, you capture what's called a handshake. And then I could try to crack your Wi-Fi password from that handshake. Once I have that, now this light bulb is on your network with the rest of your computers. And, from there, I could try to pivot from the bulb onto your computers with your sensitive information and files.
This final chapter preserves the documentary's broader thesis in miniature. The smart object is not just a gadget, it is a symbol of how convenience, connectivity, and insecurity now arrive bundled together. Modern privacy loss is not occasional. It is built into systems that collect, trade, and expose identity at scale. The darkest part of the story is not only technical vulnerability, but the gap between the size of the threat and the capacity of institutions to respond. As more of life becomes connected, ordinary objects and ordinary homes become part of the attack surface. If exposure, intrusion, and moral drift are now woven into the infrastructure of everyday life, what would real protection even have to look like? If this kind of breakdown helps you think differently, you'll probably enjoy the next video too.